Socialism always, always fails. It never succeeds. It just doesn't. I'm going to start out by talking about democratic socialist societies that have failed, and then work up to the ones that have morphed into communism. Countries such as Denmark and Sweden are touted as democratic socialist countries. In fact, what they are capitalist welfare states. People pay 40 to 50% in taxes, they get free medical care and free education, but the means of production are privately owned. But the main socialist experiment I wanted to talk about is a farm that was started in the 60s in San Francisco by Stephen Gaskin and his wife Ina Mae Gaskin. It was a communal farm. In 1970, the whole farm moved to Tennessee because land was cheaper there. They named their enterprise the farm. At its height, the farm had 700 members. Eventually, it went down to 200 members. Then in 1983, the farm changed its residential community agreement. It began requiring members to support themselves with their own income rather than to donate all income to the foundation's central corporation. One by one, the families had decided that they wanted to keep the fruits of their labor for their own families and not support others who did not work as hard. They lived the communal dream in the height of the hippie era, in the height of Hippie Town, USA, and family by family, they rejected it in favor of private enterprise. The kibbutz movement in Israel met a similar fate. At its founding, Israel had many Holocaust survivors who were very poor, they had nothing, and it made sense for them to band together in communal farms. But since 1980, privatization has taken hold. Today, 72% of kibbutzim no longer practice communal income distribution. The members' income consists solely of their personal income from their work. People there experienced democratic socialism and chose a different path. But today's democratic socialists think their democratic socialism will have a different outcome. Need I even say that doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome is a form of insanity, not to mention a form of arrogance, thinking that they know better and can do better than those that actually lived it and then walked away from it. I haven't yet mentioned the countries in which democratic socialism morphed into communism and created misery, suffering, slavery, and death for tens of millions of people. The communists between the Soviet Union, the Chinese communists, Pol Pot, and various other communist regimes outright murdered 80 million people. In addition to that, the Soviet communists caused death by starvation to another 20 million people due to their 5-year agricultural plan, which forced people to do communal farming rather than farming the way they had for generations. You could call that the fruits of central planning. Besides outright murder and death by starvation, the communists also practiced slavery. The Soviets built gulags, where they kept slave laborers, and the Chinese communists to this day, are accused of using slave labor. One more thought. Socialism is not sustainable. You can only confiscate the assets of the wealthy once. After that, everyone is equal. There's no more wealth to confiscate. Then, more often than not, the food riots come, the gulags come, dictatorship comes. The irony of the Black Lives Matter movement is that they are a thinly veiled attempt at a violent communist overthrow of the U.S. government. And if their communist revolution succeeds, they will be marching themselves right back into slavery. It's happened over and over and over again in history. It's not going to be any different this time. Don't fall for supporting them and their communist agenda. People have voted with their feet to immigrate to America for one reason and one reason only, to give their children a better chance at success than they had in their former countries. And by the way, who invented the airplane and the automobile? A capitalist or a socialist? Who invented the penicillin vaccine? A capitalist or a socialist? Who invented the TV, the radio, the telephone, the personal computer, and the internet? A capitalist or a socialist? The name of the system that brought all these advances to you is capitalism. The name of the system that brought success and more advances to more people than any other system on this planet is called capitalism. You can shoot the messenger, but it will never ever change the message.